Sleeping until nearly the hour of Mao, Wei Wuxian suddenly opened his eyes. But no matter what, he couldn't fall back asleep. He turned his head and looked at Lan Wangji, who was sleeping very quietly beside him. Reaching out, he rubbed his little face, but he didn't wake up, just wrinkled his nose as if being bullied in his dreams. Wei Wuxian smiled, got up and dressed. While dressing, his stomach growled. Like a wandering soul, he staggered to the kitchen intending to steal some breakfast, when suddenly a wave of dizziness and nausea hit him. Staggering back to his own room, he pulled the quilt over his head and lay there, in a daze. An hour later, Zhang Cheng knocked on Wei Wuxian's door. "You're still sleeping? Get up, get up. Mr. Lan sent me to inform you that Lan Wangji has recovered. He's fine now." Nobody really understands what happened, but seriously, how strange is this? The small lump on the couch stirred slightly at the sound. Why have you curled up like a little ball? Were you drinking last night?" Jiang Cheng poked at him with the tip of Sandu's edge. The lump moved again, and after a moment, a small head blinked sleepily out to look at him. Jiang Cheng's eyes widened. Small head rubbed its eyes and also widened them. "Wow!" The little thing screamed and tumbled off the bed. "Father! Mother! Elder sister!" Jiang Cheng's eyes fixed on the small lump curled up in the corner. Calling out loudly, he exited the room, shouting a phrase over the broad skies of Lotus Pier. "Wei Wuxian, he shrunk too." Lan Wangji strode swiftly. "Second young master Lan. He's in the back garden, hiding on the peach tree." The fact that Lan Wangji was under a spell was originally a secret, restricted by Lan Qiren and Zhang Fengmian to avoid panic in crowds. But since Lotus Pier had many people, gossip was inevitable. Wei Wuxian had been going out less these days, trying to bring Lan Xiaoji out when fewer people were around, but the pair, big and small, wandering everywhere, inevitably caught people's eyes, and so the news quietly spread. The families were all people of the cultivation world, accustomed to supernatural events. Upon seeing such a strange situation, they were not overly alarmed, instead maintaining tacit silence, only discussing it quietly behind closed doors during leisure. Until a quarter of an hour ago, a small figure broke through the clear morning in Lotus Pier. In the back garden, nearly half the young ladies of Lotus Pier gathered under the peach tree. A small black figure crouched on the branch, hugging a tree trunk thicker than his waist, trembling. The child wore tattered clothes with 2 large holes at the part of his knees and a dirty little face. Not the kind of dirt from tumbling in mud, but the kind that came from years of sun, rain, hunger, and neglect, marking a tough life in the mundane world. Amid his messy black hair, a pair of black eyes rolled about rapidly. Against his grayish appearance, these eyes shone brightly, drawing in the heart's gaze, outshining even the pink peach blossoms, making the whole garden's spring scenery merely a backdrop. Yet, at that moment, those eyes were filled with fear. The dense crowd of strangers under the tree was a sight he'd never seen. His small arms wrapped tightly around the trunk, his little feet perched on a small patch of branch, standing for 15 minutes straight. His trembling legs could barely support him, as if he could fall at any moment. An unfamiliar place, unfamiliar faces. Just moments ago, he was asleep in a pile of dry grass in a rundown temple on the outskirts of Yiling City, accompanied by little fleas. Now, in a blink, he found himself on a clean, bright, comfortable big bed. A sharp-eyed, finely dressed young master glared at him and shouted a name he didn't know. Stumbling out of his room like a headless fly, he wandered randomly through the large house's rooms, likely disturbing many people. Fear gripped his heart. Passing through walls and yards, he finally found a towering tree. Nimbly, he scrambled up the trunk. Wei Xiaojian loved big trees most of all. Even more than the dry grass piles in the old temples, hanging on the treetop branches was the best way to avoid wild dogs. Those bullies that ruled streets, alleys, and deep mountains. No matter how loudly the dogs barked and clawed the bark with their big paws, they couldn't reach him. Climbing upwards in terror, he hadn't realized until looking down from the high canopy how high he actually was. The footholds beneath him suddenly seemed precarious and dangerous. If he tried to descend on his own, he would surely break a leg. After staying on the tree a moment, Wei Wuxian began to regret it. The sisters below didn't seem intent on harming him. In this way, he'd only trapped himself. His nose wrinkled slightly, on the verge of tears. What should he do now? Wait for a big bird to come and carry him away? But what if the big bird ate him? His little shoes weakly kicked the tree, scratching off bits of bark that fell to the ground, startling the girls into gasping. They feared he might lose his grip and fall directly down. After a moment, a savior seemed to appear in the crowd. A figure in white dashed in like a snowflake. The girls clustered around, spoke a few words, then gradually cleared a path for him. Wei Wuxian peered at the person through the gaps in the treetops. He exuded an extremely pure and minimalist coldness. His entire body was snow-white, as if it had never been touched by the smoke of the mortal world. Even the boots on his feet were dazzlingly white, as if untouched by dust, a stark contrast to Wei Wuxian's own scruffy appearance. Wei Wuxian lowered his head, fiddling with a clump of grime smeared on his worn-out little shoes. His big toe was faintly bleeding, probably scraped when he hurriedly climbed the tree. The blood mixed with the dirt, forming a disgusting clump. Wei Wuxian felt deeply inferior. The person looked up at him, his eyes clean and clear, like moonlight had polished them. Wei Wuxian just hoped he wouldn't look at him again. He wished a crack would open in the tree so he could slip inside. Unexpectedly, the person was suddenly in front of him, the white boots lightly stepping on a branch before him. Wei Wuxian's eyes widened in shock. How did he climb up here? Wei Ying, he called out a name. With his skill, he could have easily captured Wei Wuxian directly, but he politely asked for his consent instead. It's dangerous on the tree. May I help you down? His voice was cold, yet when looking at Wei Wuxian, it bore a softness nowhere else to be found. Wei Wuxian was stunned, and the harsh edges he'd built around himself unwound into a soft bundle. He vaguely remembered that his name included the character Ying, and was not afraid to follow this person down, though timidly, Wei Wuxian said, "But I might dirty your clothes." The man looked at him and said softly, "It doesn't matter." Wei Wuxian nodded. The man lifted him up by the small bottom with one hand and held his back with the other, pulling him tightly into his embrace. He gently flipped down from the tree instead of grabbing him by the collar. Wei Wuxian felt quite strange since the mud on him dirtied the man's white clothes, turning them grayish-brown, while he really didn't mind. When the man bent down to place him on the ground, his movements were exquisitely gentle, as if afraid he might injure him. Wei Wuxian looked up at him with wide eyes. There seemed to be a smile in the man's eyes, but then his gaze was distracted by the dirt on Wei Wuxian. His handsome brows furrowed slightly as if puzzled why such a child would be so dirty. Wei Wuxian knew very well that among all the distinguished guests in the courtyard, he was probably the dirtiest. His small hands rubbed each other awkwardly, afraid of further dirtying the white-clothed fairy. He took a step back, which the man noticed. In that moment, Wei Wuxian sensed a touch of sadness in him. "Second young master Lan," someone called out from behind. Suddenly, a group of people bustled into the back garden. How many people were in this mansion? Wei Wuxian wondered, thinking of the wild rabbit holes in the mountain. No matter how many he counted, there always seemed to be more rabbits popping out. The group was energetic. At their head was the eldest in age and most dignified in attire. Wei Wuxian felt scared and hid behind the white-clothed fairy. "Ah, Ying?" The man looked kind, his face full of pity and care, and handed him a piece of melon. Wei Wuxian held the melon rind in one hand, nibbling heartily, sweet juice dripping from his small mouth. He was starving and paid no mind to the crowd. Zhang Fengmian took his small hand, and Wei Wuxian smiled at the kind man before following along. Lan family elders had not yet left and now looked gravely at the child Zhang Fengmian held. Zhang Fengmian sighed, while the crowd, heavy with suspicion, slowly took their seats nearby. The soul-departing curse theory was brought up again. Though everyone knew the curse, none had heard it could be transmitted from person to person. How did it happen that as soon as Lan Wangji recovered, Wei Wuxian suffered? Lan Wangji held the calligraphy sheet Wei Wuxian had previously given him, deep in thought. Lan Qiren asked if there was something wrong with the sheet, but Lan Wangji only shook his head, as if his thoughts were not yet clear. That calligraphy sheet was the last thing Lan Wangji touched before being cursed and was the most suspicious item in every sense. Yet both the Lan family disciples and Wei Wuxian examined it personally and found no clues. Now, Lan Wangji picked it up again, flipping it over repeatedly. The whole theory about the soul-departing curse suffered a major setback with no results. The eyes of all people in the hall followed the sheet, spinning in thought.